Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Parivrajakacarya Ashtotar Sat. His Divine Grace Abhay Charana Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai Ki Jai. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Om Ajnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I do hope that all of you are keeping well and safe and are progressing in your Krishna consciousness enthusiastically and happily. I am glad to see that you have such a nice, vibrant community of devotees there. And from what I hear, you are located in one distant corner of the city, so you're not close to any temple, but you are getting the association of many wonderful devotees like Radhesham Prabhu and others. So you are very, very fortunate. So please do continue in your Krishna consciousness with enthusiasm. So today the topic I was asked to speak on is on speaking, which means the importance of speaking and an understanding of what kind of speech is essential, is important, is helpful, and what kind of speech we should not resort to. So speech, of course, as we all know, is something that we cannot do without. Generally, when we speak of speaking, we all know how attached we are to speaking. The proper word to use would be addicted. We are all addicted to speaking. We cannot do without it. Now, how can we compare speech with food, let us say? We all know that without food, we will die. We can fast only up to a certain point. And after that, if we don't get food, then certainly we will die. So yes, without food, we will die. But without speech, without speaking, we cannot live. Just consider that you are forced to have a vow of silence. How long can you continue like this? very difficult. I remember in the late 1980s when there was a Kumbh Mela in Prayag. So when I had visited there with the devotees, at that time there was a crowd at a particular part of the whole gathering. And a particular sadhu was the main attraction there. And he was on a tree house, that is, he was seated on a tree. And thousands of people had gathered to look at him, to have his darshan. And he was renowned as being very, very austere. And his claim to fame principally had been that he had maintained a vow of silence for many, many years. I think it was more than 12 years or something. So because he had kept a vow of silence for such a long period of time, naturally it became a cause of wonder for everyone. How can anyone keep quiet and not speak a word for so many years together? Because we have experienced that we cannot do without speaking. In fact, you put two people together and immediately it starts. We start speaking. We cannot do without it. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear the story of the pastime of the Avadhut. There is one Avadhut who says that he has 24 gurus. And one of the gurus are various, like there are some like the ocean or the sky, the tree, the earth, the mountains. So these are all his different gurus, meaning that he has learnt some very important lessons from them. And one of them is the young unmarried girl. And different suitors, the parents and families of different suitors would come to her house to fix up some match for marriage. So one time the family came and there was nobody in the house, so she was alone. So she made the family sit down and she went inside into the kitchen and she was preparing some food for them. Naturally, because she wanted to convey a good impression and she wanted to give the idea that they were well-to-do, where the fact was that they were not well-to-do, they were poor. So when she was preparing the food, she had many bangles on her wrists. So as she was cooking and preparing whatever it is she was preparing, naturally the bangles clanged with each other and they made a clanging sound. So she thought that it was not a good idea. That all these bangles should make this clanging noise, then the guests will understand that they had no help. They had no domestic help, and that this lady was herself doing all the work. So then she took off all her bangles and she left only 2 on each hand. But still the 2 bangles were clanging. They were making some noise together. So then she took off one bangle from each hand. So what remained was only 1 bangle on each hand. Now she happily worked very quickly. She prepared some food for them and offered it to the guests. So the lesson the Avadhuta learned from this is that even if there are 2 bangles, still they will make noise. So in other words, if there are 2 people together also, they will start speaking. They will create some noise. Noise means some unwanted speech, something that is not really necessary. Somehow or the other they will speak. So therefore he learned from this episode, it is better to be in solitude, in isolation, to be alone. Because the moment somebody comes near us, we like to speak. What we speak is another question, but we want to speak something. So we see that the urge to speak is extremely powerful, and we have many, many topics to discuss. As the Bhagavatam says, Shrota Vyadini Rajendra Nrinam Santi Sahasrashaha Apashyatam Atma Tattvam Griheshu Grihamedhinam. So Shukadev Goswami tells King Parikshit that, O king, in this world, people have thousands and thousands of topics to speak, to hear about, to discuss, to remember, etc. And that is because they have no interest in spiritual matters, Atma Tattva. So Atma Tattva means the science of self-realization. So because they have no interest in the science of self-realization, they resort to speaking and hearing thousands and thousands of topics which are of no relevance, which are of no benefit and no importance, truly speaking, from a spiritual point of view. So this is the nature of this world. We just want to keep on speaking. And there is this joke which one of our devotees mentioned one time, and I like to repeat that joke, especially when it comes to topics like this one, where he said there was this doctor, and this devotee went to the doctor's clinic, and he saw there were many thermometers on the table of that doctor. So the devotee asked him that, why have you kept so many thermometers? So when the patient comes in front of you, then you only deal with one patient at a time. So you just put one thermometer and then you get the temperature. Why do you need so many thermometers? So the doctor replied that the patients are in the waiting room and I deal with one patient at a time. Yes, that is correct. But when these patients come together in the waiting room, they start speaking and speaking and they create such a nuisance. So I tell the nurse that they should go and put one thermometer in everybody's mouth. So then forcefully they all have to keep quiet. And I keep the thermometer till their turn comes to come inside. And then I take out the thermometer so that then now when the need is there to speak, they will speak. So this is the nature. And there is a saying in English also that actually we reveal ourselves when we speak. So we should speak when it is necessary to speak. So this is the nature of the power of speech. So in the Nectar of Instruction also we hear Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, etc. You all know this verse very well. So I will not repeat it. You have done your Bhakti Shastri. So you're all Pandits now, scholars. You know this important verse. So the very first one is Vacho Vegam. Vacha is the speech, power of speech. And Veg is the force. So the urge to speak is extremely strong. And it is so strong that it is irresistible. We cannot do without it. We have to speak something or the other. And like this, all the different urges of the body are like that. They are irresistible. But of all of them, Vacho Vegam, the urge to speak, has been mentioned first. It is interesting. Probably because Srila Rupa Goswami wants to emphasize that this is something that is the most underestimated urge. The other urges we all understand. We all know the urge to eat, etc. They're all urges that we all recognize and appreciate. We accept that. But the urge to speak is a kind of a hidden urge, in the sense that we don't recognize that as being something so important. We just keep on speaking. Let us notice in our own life how much we speak. And what will happen if we are asked to not speak for a long time? Maybe for a few minutes, somehow or the other, we can avoid speaking, but after that, then we are unable to resist the urge to speak. So, in the purport, of that verse, Srila Prabhupada says that everyone has the power to speak. And as soon as we get an opportunity, we begin to speak. And if we do not speak about genuine spiritual subjects, we will necessarily speak about all sorts of materialistic topics. And then Srila Prabhupada gives the example of the toad or the frog. The frog likes to hear the sound of its own voice. So when the frog stands at the edge of a pond and stands on a rock and starts croaking loudly and mistakenly thinks that the sound of its croaking is very melodious, and therefore he croaks even louder and louder. And all this speaking does, or this croaking does, is to attract a snake. And the snake, who is somewhere nearby, comes and then swallows the snake. In other words, all that the toad or the frog accomplishes by such loud croaking is to invite death. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada explains that we like to speak and speak and speak, and we like to speak so much on any topic, and the urge to speak is so strong that we do not realize that actually all we are doing is wasting our human valuable time and energy, and we are merely inviting death. It is interesting that, and you must have heard this from your childhood, that God has provided us with 2 ears and only 1 mouth. So the indications of God has given us a hint by the way that He has designed our anatomy, that He wants us to hear twice as much as we speak. But actually the reality is not that. The reality is that we speak much more than we hear. And we see this in conversations. Whenever conversations are going on, people very rarely want to hear. They want to speak. And this urge therefore goes on stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, so the one manifestation of the urge of the materialistic mentality is to speak a lot. So therefore we may think that the way to counter it is to accept a vow of silence. And Srila Prabhupada speaks about this in the Nectar of Instruction as well. So the other extreme of speaking excessively is to keep silent. But actually, as Srila Prabhupada has explained, both excessive talking and keeping completely silent are different shades of materialism. Because keeping silent ultimately is not beneficial. Of course, it is better to keep silent than to speak materialistic nonsense. But better than speaking materialistic nonsense is to speak something spiritual. So when we speak from a relative point of view, yes, silence is better than excessive materialistic speaking. Actually, incidentally, Vidur is asked by Dhritarashtra in the Mahabharata that, we are supposed to, in Kali Yuga, people are supposed to have a lifespan of at least 100 years, but we find that very few people actually live for that much time. So what is the reason for that? So Vidur gives several reasons. He gives 6 reasons for the diminishing span of life in Kali Yuga in general. And one of the reasons he gives is that we have a tendency to talk excessively. In other words, when we excessively talk, we reduce the span of our life. So we become short-lived. And because in Kali Yuga especially, people talk so much, so they have short span of life. Of course, there are other reasons also, but this is one particular reason. So anyway, so Srila Prabhupada points out that the vow of silence is not a proper response or an antidote to excessive speech. Like that sadhu in the Kumbh Mela who had maintained a vow of silence for 12 years, or perhaps more, whatever time, that is not really a solution. It may be for some time, it may work for some time, but it is not ultimately a solution because we have to ultimately speak about Krishna. So, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear that as Narad Muni's instructions to Vyasadev, Nayad vachas chitra padam harer yasho jagat pavitram pragranita karhichit tad vayasam tirtham ushanti manasa nayatra hamsa niramantyushikshayah. So, Narad Muni is explaining to Vyasadeva the importance of avoiding speech which does not glorify the Lord. Importance of not speaking things that, or rather the lack of benefit of speaking things that do not glorify the Lord. Nayat vachas chitra padam harer yasho jagat pavitram pragranita karichit. So, those words that do not describe the glories of the Lord who purifies the entire universe are like Vayasam Tirtham. Vayasa is a crow. So it's like a place of pilgrimage for crows. And those who are saintly persons, Ushanti, Manasaha, Manasa refers to saintly persons. So saintly persons do not indulge in such talk. They do not go to such places of pilgrimage for crows. On the other hand, they would rather dwell in topics that are related to Krishna. Na yatra hansa niramanti ushikshayaha. Ushikshayaha refers to those who reside in the spiritual realm. Now we know that crows are basically fond of dirty places. So you will find them in, let us say, places where there is garbage, etc. And as opposed to the crow, you will find a swan that likes to reside in very beautiful places. A swan, you will see it gliding in a lake that is surrounded by nice hills and trees and beautiful flowers and so on, where sweet breezes are blowing. So this is the kind of environment a swan likes to be in, whereas a crow likes to be in an environment which is dirty. Even if a crow is in a beautiful garden, but if there is a patch of garbage in one corner, the crow will go for that patch of garbage. So similarly, materialistic people, according to Narad Muni, relish topics that are materialistic and that have no relation to the Supreme Lord. But saintly persons have no interest in such topics and they do not derive any pleasure there. So what do the saintly people do then? What kind of topics do they like to speak? And in this famous verse, which is also a verse that can be used by us to promote the distribution of transcendental literature of books, Narad Muni says, Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratishlokam abadhavatyapi namanyanantasya yashonkitani yat shrinvanti gayanti grinanti sadhavaha. So Narad Muni says that those who are manasa, those who are saintly persons, what do? They engage in discussing topics that are concerned with the Supreme Lord. And these topics are very powerful because they can actually create a revolution in the hearts of people, in the sinful lives of people. Janata agha viplavaha. Agha means sinful activities. Janata refers to the people, and Viplavaha indicates a revolution. So Tadvag Visargo, those words which pertain to the glorification of the Supreme Lord, can create a revolution in the sinful lives of the people in general. This is the only way in which not only the sins but also the sinful propensities in the hearts of people can be destroyed. Yasmin pratishlokam abhaddhavatyapi. So every word of this, every shloka of such narrations have such potency. And even if there is some particular defect in that, there is a defect in the sense, not a philosophical defect, not a factual defect, but a defect in, like, say, not pronouncing the words properly, or not being correct in one's grammar, or in the construction of the sentences, or in one's accent, and so on. So even if these speeches have some defects from this point of view, but still they're extremely beneficial. And the saintly people still like to hear, to remember, to compose, etc., such speeches. So in other words, the correct response, the correct usage of speech rather, is neither to keep speaking materialistic topics, neither is it to maintain a vow of silence. The real solution is to speak Krishna Katha. When Krishna Katha is spoken, we get purified, the entire world gets purified. So now, having discussed this, let's consider the importance of speech now. What does speech actually indicate? Now, speech is such an essential part of our life, isn't it? We can't do without it, as we have seen. So we have to discuss this topic of speech, because just like we have to discuss food, we have to discuss the mind, we have to discuss anger. So we have to discuss all these urges because they are very important and inseparable parts of our lives. So speech is something that indicates the personality of somebody. Now, when in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 2nd chapter, Krishna speaks about a sthita prajna, or one whose intelligence is steady, is absorbed in transcendence. That is what a sthita prajna is. So naturally, when Krishna mentions this sthita prajna, then Arjuna now wants to know, what are the characteristics of such a sthita prajna? Sthita prajnasya ka bhasha samadhi sthasya keshava sthitadhi kim prabhasheta kim asita vrajeta kim. So he says, my dear Krishna, so please tell me, sthita prajnasya, of this sthita prajna ka bhasha, what is his language like? It also indicates qualities. So what is his language like? What are his qualities? Samadhi sthasya keshava. So, O Keshava, for one who is situated in the state of samadhi, what is his language like? What are his qualities? Then, sthitadhihi kim prabhasheta. How does he speak? Not only what his language is like, but also his manner of speaking. How does he speak? Kim asita. How does he sit? Now, the word asita literally means sit. So Arjun means to ask not merely how a person physically sits, but also essentially it means how the person is unresponsive to sense objects. How does he restrain his senses from the sense objects? And vrajeta kim, how does he walk? So the word vrajeta or vraja indicates going or walking. And incidentally, This is why Vrindavan is also called Vraja, because it is a place where the cows are always walking, they're grazing, they're moving around. So because of that, Vrindavan is called Vraja. That is just an incidental point I'm mentioning. So Vrajeta Kim, how does a transcendental person walk? The reference is not so much towards the physical act of walking, of how the physical body moves, but actually Arjuna's intention, as explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and by Srila Prabhupada also, is that how does he engage his senses? How do his senses act in relation to the sense objects? And in the purport, which is very, very significant, Srila Prabhupada explains that there are symptoms for each person in terms of his situation. So therefore, a rich person has some symptoms by which you can understand whether he's rich, that he's rich. Similarly, for a poor person, for a diseased person, for a healthy person, for a learned person, for a foolish person. So every kind of person has some symptoms. It is by these symptoms that one can understand something about that person. So naturally, for a transcendental person also, there must be some symptoms. So Arjuna's question is very important. So Prabhupada says something very important in this purport. He says, most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks. For speech is the most important quality of any man. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak. Certainly, a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks. As soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna-conscious person is that he speaks only of Krishna and matters relating to him. Other symptoms automatically follow. So, this is very important. Prabhupada is saying that the speech is the most important quality of a person. So please consider this point very deeply. Think about it for a few seconds. Speech is the most important quality of a person. And one can determine the consciousness of a person by hearing somebody speak. What kinds of topics does this person speak? And how does this person speak? In what manner? Not just the language, not just the choice of words, not just the tone of voice, but also how does one use one's body, how does one interact with others, all the different aspects of speech. What is the content of one's speech? What are the topics one is speaking about? So all these are symptoms that indicate a person. So for devotees, it's very important for us to keep note of these things. So even as we interact with each other, we must be very conscious, because there is a tendency to do prajalpa. Now, as you have studied Bhakti Shastri, we also know that prajalpa is one of the things prohibited by Srila Rupa Goswami. Prajalpa in this context indicates useless talk, materialistic talk. So, as devotees, when we come together, we note that our previous tendencies of speaking materialistically, they come to the forefront. And even if we are associating with devotees, it is a natural urge to speak something that is not purely Krishna conscious. There is a strong urge to speak on materialistic topics. And even if such discussion or such topics are about devotees, it may be criticism of devotees, fault finding of devotees. So this tendency is very strong. So we must guard against what Srila Prabhupada is saying here. And now I will urge you to open up your Bhagavad Gita to chapter 7, text 15. This is going to be the heart of my talk today. This is the most important message that I would like to convey in today's talk. The subject is vast, and I will not have time to discuss all the different aspects of this topic. But this is essentially the heart of the topic. So I think all of you, being very proficient in the use of computers, will either you have the physical book, or if you can open it to 7.15, or you open it and you're on your electronic devices. And you can repeat the verse after me. Okay, so you have brought it up. I beg your pardon, 17.15, not 7.15. I made a mistake, yes. 17.15, sorry about that. 17.15. 17, yes, you got it. Excellent. Now, since all of you are studying Bhakti Shastri, I'm sure you have also studied this. Krishna, in this section of the Bhagavad Gita, is speaking about the different types of austerities. And he speaks about austerities of the mind, austerities of the body, and austerities of speech. So there are three things: kaya, mana, vacha. Yes? So all three are important for us. The kaya refers to the body, mana refers to the mind, and vacha refers to our speech. Kaya ne vacha manasendra yaiva. Yes, you know that verse. You must have heard from childhood. Buddhyatmanava. Yes? Okay, so we won't go into that to save time. So kaya, mana, and vacha. So having described the austerities of the body and austerities of the mind, he now in this 15th verse speaks about the austerities of speech. Vakmaya. Vak refers to speech or of the voice. Vakmaya refers to of the voice or of speech. And tapaha uchyate. Tapaha refers to austerity. So here, the austerity of speech is being described. So let us chant this verse. Anudvega karam vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyayabhyasanam chaiva vanmayam tapa uchyate. Anudvega karam vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyayabhyasanam chaiva vanmayam tapa uchyate. So I'll read the synonyms, word for word translation by Srila Prabhupada. Anudvega karam, not agitating. Vakyam, words. Satyam, truthful. Priya, dear. Hitam, beneficial. Cha, also. Yat, which. Swadhyaya, of Vedic study. Abhyasanam, practice. cha, also, eva, certainly, vakmayam, of the voice, tapaha, austerity, uchyate, is said to be. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. Purport: one should not speak in such a way as to agitate the minds of others. Of course, when a teacher speaks, he can speak the truth for the instruction of his students. But such a teacher should not speak to those who are not his students, if he will agitate their minds. This is penance as far as talking is concerned. Besides that, one should not talk nonsense. The process of speaking in spiritual circles is to say something upheld by the scriptures. One should at once quote from scriptural authority to back up what he is saying. At the same time, such talk should be very pleasurable to the ear. By such discussions, one may derive the highest benefit and elevate human society. There is a limitless stock of Vedic literature, and one should study this. This is called penance of speech. Okay, so can we have the verse again? Yes. So this is very important. So if you see, this is the foundational verse actually for any topic on speech that we may want to understand. And I would urge all of you to please memorize this verse also and understand its meaning properly. So, Vanmayam Tapa Uchyate indicates that it is, the austerity of speech is said to be like this, as described above. So there are 5 elements here of austerity of speech. So kindly note the verse. First is Anudvega Karam Vakyam. Okay. Now Vakyam means literally sentences or words, or in this context it means speech. Udvega Karam. Karam means that which causes, creates. And Udvega means disturbance or agitation. Now, when you attach the prefix an, it means the opposite, not. So, Udvega Karam Vakyam means those words that are agitating or disturbing to others. And when you put the word an before Udvega, it becomes Anudvega Karam Vakyam, which means that words that are not agitating or disturbing to others. So the first point or the first element of the austerity of speech is that one should not speak words that are agitating or disturbing to others. The second element of the austerity of speech is that one should speak satyam. One should speak the truth. The third is that one should speak that which is priya. Priya means that which is pleasing. Fourth, hitam. One should speak that which is for our hit or for our benefit. We should not speak anything that is not beneficial for anybody. And finally, the fifth one, Swadhyaya Abhyasanam. Abhyasanam refers to the practice of repeatedly doing something, carefully, attentively. So what is it that we should practice doing attentively? That is one of the elements of the austerity of speech, Swadhyaya. One should recite the Vedic literature. So here in terms of Swadhyaya, because in the olden days, the process of study was to recite and to repeat, to speak. So therefore, The word Swadhyaya here can be understood in terms of regular recitation and speaking. So now, very, very important, these 5 elements. So please remember, first element, anudvega karam vakyam. We should not speak words that are agitating or disturbing to people. Second, we should speak the truth, satyam. Third, we should speak that which is pleasing to everybody, priya. And fourth, we should speak that which is beneficial for everybody. And fifth, Swadhyaya Abhyasanam, one should regularly recite Vedic literature. So let's talk briefly about the fifth one first. That I have already mentioned in the earlier part of the talk when I quoted the 2 verses that Narad Muni speaks to Vyasadeva, and he indicates that it is important to speak about Krishna. As devotees, it is very important that we should recite Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. We should chant the holy names, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra specifically. We should recite pastimes of Krishna, messages of Krishna, or we should discuss different aspects of devotional service. So our speech should be absorbed in connection with Krishna. So in other words, we should also regularly find time to study and recite our books, specifically Srila Prabhupada's books, Transcendental Literature. Now we'll talk about the other 4. Specifically in relation to other 4, the 4 points, we understand that this is speech in the mode of goodness, as indicated by Srila Sridhar Swami, the great commentator on the Srimad Bhagavatam. He has also written a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And in his commentary, he indicates that speech can be in the mode of passion, goodness, ignorance, like that. So now you're all familiar with the 3 modes of material nature. You are familiar with the characteristics of each of the 3 modes. So all the activities, all the things that we see around us can be characterized or classified according to the 3 modes of nature. So similarly, speech can also be classified as speech in the mode of ignorance, speech in the mode of passion, speech in the mode of goodness. So these 5, actually, the austerity in the mode for austerity of speech is actually speech in the mode of goodness. And Srila Sridhar Swami says that by cultivating speech in the mode of goodness, it serves as an impetus for spiritual development, ultimately resulting in attraction to Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And these top 4 attributes of speech together constitute the highest austerity of speech. So now I will ask you, keep in mind these 4. Yes? Which is the most important of these 4? Let's keep aside the 5th one that we are doing anyway. We will have to do it regularly. But let's talk about the first 4. That our speech should not be agitating to others, number 1. Number 2, we should speak the truth. Number 3, it should be pleasing. Number 4, it should be beneficial. So these are the 4 characteristics, yes, that we're going to talk about. Now, you can raise your electronic hand and give an answer as to which is the most important amongst these 4. Okay, somebody has raised the hand. You can unmute yourself and give the answer.
Answer.
I didn't hear. What is that?
Beneficial.
That which is beneficial. Okay, so that is one answer. Any other answer? Yes. So those who have raised their hand one by one, you can unmute and give your answer. Only 3 or 4, otherwise the whole lecture will get over.
Not agitating others.
Okay, not agitating others. That's the second answer.
Pleasing.
Pleasing. Okay, so in this way, one by one, you give all the 4. And yes, next, 1 or 2 more. Yes.
Beneficial to others. No, not agitating.
Okay. Fine. So actually, the small girl who spoke the first, she gave the correct answer. While all 4 are important, certainly, but speaking for the benefit of others is the most important element of speech. Now, that doesn't mean that the other 3 or 4 are not important, but we are just speaking relatively. Yes, that of all the items, this is the most important one. Now, let me give you a simple example. And Prabhupada has mentioned that here, the teacher. Sometimes it is the duty of the teacher to scold the student, right? So the student may not it may not appear very pleasing to the ears of the student. We have all been scolded in our childhood by our parents, by our teachers, by our elders perhaps. Who has not been scolded? Yes? So, if the teachers or the parents abide by the principle that truth should always be pleasing, then what will happen? Then the upbringing of the child will be compromised. Yes? If they say the child wants to play with a knife, yes, the child doesn't understand that the knife can cause harm. So, the parent says, even if it is spoken not in a harsh way, but it says, don't play with the knife, for the child's ear, it is not something pleasing. The child thinks it's very displeasing. The child becomes very upset. But still, the parents will continue and they will speak in that way and remove the knife from the hands of the child. You see? So, it may not always be desirable even, what to speak of possible, to speak something that is pleasing or something that may not be agitating. We should try our best to speak in a pleasing manner. We should try our best to speak in a way that doesn't agitate others. So, but it may not always be possible. It may not even be desirable in some circumstances. Then what about somebody may say, well, speaking the truth is the most important thing in daily life. Suppose you go to somebody's house for prasadam and somehow, the prasadam, there is something wrong in some particular item of the prasadam. And the hostess asks you, so how is the prasadam? And you say, oh, it is very bad. This is like this. Because I have heard that I must speak the truth. Satyam, we have been told. So, you may not say that. Why to unnecessarily hurt the feelings of that devotee or that person? So you will say, yes, it is fine, you may say. And so the important thing, therefore, is that even though all these aspects of speech are very important, and we should try as far as possible to accommodate these elements in our speech, but ultimately the most important thing is that it should be for our benefit. This is the most important point. So, of course, there are so many other things to to consider. You see, if we do not keep that in mind, then everything will become topsy-turvy. Because there will be times when something is true, but it is not beneficial, then we should not say it. Yes? Just because something is true, it doesn't give us the right to just speak it indiscriminately if it is not beneficial. This is a very important point. But truth that is beneficial for others has to be spoken in a pleasing manner. That is the best way to do things. Now, usually I do this as a seminar, and there is a lot to discuss in that. We give many examples and Prabhupada's quotes and his letters and so on, but we don't have the time. So suffice it to say that Prabhupada many times speaks about how important it is for a devotee to speak the truth, especially a devotee, everybody, but especially a devotee. But, and even though sometimes if the truth is not pleasing, if the truth is agitating, we must still speak it. But he also clarifies that an experienced preacher, an experienced devotee will learn how to speak the truth without agitating others, how to speak the truth in a pleasing manner. So this is important. So this is an art, Srila Prabhupada says in one letter to one devotee, that we must learn the art of speaking the truth. We should not compromise on speaking the truth. Wherever we are, we must speak the truth, but we must learn the art of speaking it palatably. So sometimes, of course, it may be unavoidable that we may have to speak in a way that is not palatable. But as far as possible, we should try to speak the truth in a palatable way, in a pleasing manner, in a way that doesn't agitate others. That is the best way in which we can speak. Now, I'm sure there will be many, many practical questions. We're almost completing 1 hour in our, we're almost at 8:30. So what I will do is, since this topic is very large and one could go on speaking and giving so many examples, I will stop here and leave the floor open for questions for a few minutes so that we can discuss, and perhaps some more points will emerge from that. So please meditate on this one verse, Anudvegakaram Vakyam, this particular verse, and think about this. This is the main message that I want to give in today's talk, with the last line, last being that one must speak the truth, but as far as possible, one must endeavor to develop that expertise to speak the truth in a pleasing manner, in a manner that is not agitating to others. Okay, so I will stop here. So how should we go about the question?
We'll go
The
one
questions.
at a time. Maharaj, if you permit me, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. Maharaj, generally there is an aspect of being introvert. People say that you are introvert, some say that you are extrovert. And in our corporate world, if you are introvert, you don't, you're not that recognized and rewarded in an organization. Does being an introvert and control of speech, is this the same thing?
No, it is not the same thing. An introvert is one who is very shy to speak. He or she doesn't like to interact with others, doesn't like to speak much, is very reserved by nature. That is what an introvert is. Whereas, as Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur have explained, that a devotee can traverse from one extreme to the other extreme when it comes to the usage of speech. Where necessary, the devotee will remain silent. Where necessary, the devotee will speak only a few words. Where necessary, the devotee can speak continuously for hours together because it is in connection with Krishna. The devotee should have the judgment and the intelligence to understand when to do what, when to be silent, when to be reserved in speech, when to speak maybe just a few words, and when to speak a lot. So the devotee is willing to do anything that is beneficial, that is required. So as far as your professional situation at work, your question is that if one is seen to be an introvert, then it doesn't work in the office, then you do whatever is necessary. Do the needful so that you can do your work effectively at work. At the same time, remember, the expertise is that you can speak the truth but in a pleasing manner without unnecessarily agitating others. As far as is possible, we should adopt this. Only when things are beyond a certain point and there is no option left, then what to do? Then we may have to speak words that may be agitating to others. But we should try to avoid that as much as possible.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, man.
Yes.
Roji, can you hear me?
Who is speaking? It's like an Akashvani coming, so you please reveal yourself.
Thank you so much for the wonderful lecture.
Otherwise, everybody will. Sorry, yes.
Dinesh Praveen. Dinesh.
So we cannot see Dinesh.
Sorry, Maharaj, my background is not that great right now. Maharaj, we have to associate with people who are not in direct connection with the reality. Sometimes either people are not ready to accept the truth, or sometimes they are not in a condition to accept the truth. So, as you said, one should speak the things only which is beneficial, which may not be practical. Like, for example, the people whom I'm a yoga instructor, so the students who come to me are mostly more like a left-wing liberal sort of mindset, and for them to speak the reality sounds very harsh and very controlling to them. So at times I have to talk in their language in a way that at least they should have or develop some sort of respect for their reality. So sometimes I have to go to their level, talk according to them. It could be about a show, it could be about something that's going on in the world, and slowly connecting them to Mahabharata or something like that. So how do we deal with the things or the times when we don't have, when we don't speak something which is beneficial, but we'll have to speak according to them, something like that.
Okay, very nice, Dinesh. So let us have your darshan too.
I'll just give you 1 minute. Sorry, I'm really sorry.
Otherwise, we don't know who we are speaking to.
He's one among the youngest in our group, Maharaj.
Sorry?
He's one among the youngest in our group.
Okay, but he's asked a very important question.
Yes, Maharaj.
So, Dinesh, the answer is that a preacher has to develop the expertise to speak according to time, place, and circumstance and people. Depending on who you are speaking to and what the circumstances are and the time is and what the topic is, etc., you have to appropriately speak. What is the ultimate objective? The objective is that whoever you're speaking to can slowly understand the spiritual point of view. So even if it means that you have to go a little slow, or in some cases that you have to be a little indirect, so be it. So the devout Krishna will give you the intelligence, and if you also speak to experienced preachers, they will also give you further tips on how to deal with situations where you are preaching to people who are not receptive to Krishna consciousness. If you were to directly speak Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, then you have to consider what best needs to be done. As Srila Prabhupada spoke in the purport to the verse that I read from Bhagavad Gita, one of the previous verses that I read, even in this verse, that actually when a teacher speaks to a student, then you may speak harshly if necessary, only if really necessary, not just we whimsically utilize that principle. So if somebody has not accepted you as a teacher or as some kind of is not receptive to hearing you, then you have to be more careful about how you will present that knowledge. So you have to take a judgment, take a call on how much you want to speak, how you want to speak, and then gradually bring them to the idea of being more receptive to Krishna consciousness. Okay, Dinesh?
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Yes, who is speaking? I cannot
Who
see.
is speaking? Who is speaking?
I am Shila.
So whoever speaks, please come on video so I can see who is asking the question. Yes? Yes, Hare Krishna. Yes, please ask the question.
Sheila Mataji, you have to unmute. Unmute yourself, Mataji.
I'm audible?
Yes, Mataji. Yes.
Okay. Okay, Maharaj ji, I have a question.
Yes.
In our profession, if I say truth, the organization may come to a lot of losses, or that promoter may get losses. So in such case, sometimes we tell lie. So what is the repercussion in that? How do
Okay.
you get this thing?
What kind of profession do you work in? Are you in marketing and advertising?
I'm a chartered accountant.
Sorry?
I'm a chartered accountant.
Oh, I
I'm a
see.
chartered accountant. So lots of lie I tell in the tax is that everywhere. My total life in professional life is you can say lots of lie I say. So how to come out of this truth? How can express my truth in that case?
Yes, again, it's a very practical question that you have asked. Thank you for asking this. I'm sure that many other devotees also are in a similar position, even if they're not chartered accountants. Lawyers also are in similar position.
Yes, yes.
Those who are in the advertising profession also have to do it. Prabhupada used to also say that sometimes when you go to a shopkeeper to buy something, the shopkeeper will tell you, actually, the cost of this is so much, but just for you, I'm giving 50% discount. And Prabhupada says, if he's speaking the truth, then he will be in a loss and go out of business very quickly. But that is part of his selling technique, his selling strategy. So he does that. So to come to your question, yes, in commercial life, shall we say, it is very common to see this kind of lie happening. Now, personally speaking, you may get different answers from different devotees. Okay, in this matter. If you ask this question to different devotees, you may get different answers. But my personal opinion is that since we are practicing devotees, as far as possible, we should try to avoid being in a situation where we have to speak continuously, keep on speaking this. If that's what the whole profession is about, everything that we do, then there is something wrong there. Then it is not a healthy thing. it is not advisable to be in a situation where it has to continuously do that. If there is something like an emergency situation, one can understand where one can, for a higher purpose, do something like that in a rare situation. Now, there are so many pastimes that we can narrate from Mahabharata and others that may speak about this, that sometimes it may be permitted to speak a lie, but that should be only in very extraordinary situations and in considerations of some higher principle, than more important principle, and that in that respect one may do it, but that has to be very carefully, very judiciously done. It can't be the rule. It has to be the exception to the rule. The rule has to be that we should try to do things that are straightforward as far as possible. Unfortunately, the environment around us is not like that. And if somebody wants to be in a job, in a company, or even as a professional, they are asking us to do certain things. So you have to judge the relative merits of the particular acts, individual transactions or acts that you are expected to do. If the act is such that you are, if there is no connection to Krishna consciousness and you are asked to do one after the other, all sorts of things, then I would not be very happy to continue such an activity. Then probably one has to look for some alternative. One stops working in that company, or one works, in somewhere else. But what you're saying is correct. Everybody in your profession will be faced with this. There was one company secretary who was also asking me the similar question. So whether they are lawyers or company secretaries, chartered accountants, and so many other professionals nowadays are expected to do these things. Otherwise, they lose their job, or whatever, some very serious repercussion may happen. So if it's simply a question of saving your job or your livelihood, and it's so important that if you don't occasionally do this, then you can't maintain your family or something like that. If it's such a situation, then what can be done? Okay, to some degree do that, but remember, then it will have its consequences. But as far as possible, try to avoid it. Maybe if you can do your own private practice, where you are your own master, you don't need to listen to any boss. And but of course, still your clients will demand this of you, and if you don't do this, then they won't come to you. That may also happen. But what to do is you have to make a choice somewhere. So you have to strike that proper balance somewhere and see. So I can give you this general answer. It may not be completely satisfying to you, but this is the best I can do in the circumstances. Is that okay?
Please unmute yourself, Sriram. Just unmute.
Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam.
Is the answer?
If I start, even the practice also, private practice also, the clients demand this, because they wanted that one signature of yours, one wrong signature of mine, maybe they will be saving so much. So I don't know. Now I'm thinking, I have chosen a very wrong profession. If Krishna could be that type, me, not to choose this profession.
Well, you do things in a certain way that if there are harmless things, then it's okay. If they're really harmless, it's one thing. But if it's really major, and also another problem is it could get you in trouble also. Tomorrow if something happens in the law, you could also have difficulty. So, it's wiser to be careful about these things. So I would not advise just blindly agreeing to whatever requests your clients or your bosses make.
Another thing, can I tell you?
Yes.
That when suppose they wanted some bank support, maybe they have that much of worth of capital, but we show them such a way that they have that much of capital and they get the support from the bank. That is also, I know I'm not telling truth. So because of, and that also with my signature I'm giving. I don't know that because no, I'm feeling nowadays no. After coming to the Krishna conscious, I'm feeling I'm doing all this so badly. I'm doing it. So it is better that I just wanted to suggestion from you. Should I give up this profession?
You see, I cannot answer such very major questions just in the course of a small question answer session like that. This is a very important decision in your life. I cannot just very casually give you an answer, but I have given you some general principles. Now you have to uh, kind of apply these principles in your life and take your decision. Right? I have pointed out it's not a good practice to keep on doing this like this. It has its karmic consequences also. But you have to see if it's something harmless, if it's something that is connected to somebody's Krishna conscious benefit, or if it is something that you just can't do without, then to the smallest degree possible you can consider, but I would not recommend it. Okay? Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. I think
one minute request.
Yeah.
One small instance.
Mataji, you can take others' questions also. Hare Krishna, Mataji, take others' questions also. Don't mind, yeah. And Mataji, I think I'm going to edit this video because I'm going to be recording this and keeping. I don't want your clients to see this video. Just saying that you're putting the capital wrong. Yeah. So thank you, Maharaj. And any other questions?
Yeah, Prabhuji, I have a question. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. Maharaj, we know that like words are something which are, it's very easy to hurt others with our words. So speech is something which is like one of the main reasons where it causes a break in relationship or causes trouble. So, and we may speak something with best of our intentions, but still the other party may misrepresent it or may think otherwise. So how do we actually handle this situation where the words which we speak have caused grief to others and then we misrepresented also, though we have done it with the best of our intentions?
Well, sometimes it can't be helped. If there is no choice and you have to speak something that will be a cause of hurting others, if there is no other choice, then you have to do it. What can be done? And then
one other thing, like they might misrepresent. My intention is good. Somebody might misrepresent.
Then you have to clarify matters with the concerned people so that there is no misunderstanding, no misrepresentation. Right? So remember that even when we speak harshly, it has got to be something that we do very rarely, very rarely. It can't be our default setting. In the name of speaking the truth, we just keep on hurting others. That's not the way. If at all our words hurt others and we have no choice and we just had to do it, it has to be something very rare.
Maharaj, I have one other question. Maharaj, there is this aspect of accumulating information. The more information we accumulate, the tendency to speak also comes out accordingly. Like I'm hearing so much, and in corporate world, the most powerful person is the one who has the most information. Like, you get all your your answers which this person feels the most powerful. So this tendency to accumulate information and then making it so difficult to stop yourself from speaking. So is there a regulation needed even to accumulate information, madam? I mean, should not go beyond accumulating more information to control your speech?
No, it depends on what that information is. If it is useless information, then definitely we have to put a limit. But as far as Krishna consciousness is concerned, you can go on hearing the pastimes of Krishna, messages of Krishna. You can go on hearing, there's no problem. Unlimitedly go on hearing. But not with the idea that we will impress others with our knowledge. The intention is important. If one is hearing simply for the sake of purification of the heart and to please Krishna, and even if it is for the sake of preaching, but not with the intention that one will gain some name and fame and reputation, then one may do it. But then one has to exercise control over the speech in the sense that one has to speak as per the need. As I mentioned in response to an earlier question, sometimes we may have to be silent, sometimes speak only few words, and sometimes, if required, we may speak for hours together at a stretch.
Maharaj, now we are in a digital world. Now, speaking is a very nice thing when you're in person speaking to a person. You know, like you're talking to a person in front, so you see that person's reaction and you try to change your speech so it doesn't agitate them or it is comfortable for them. But now we are in a digital world where speaking is more about sharing. You know, like we are in WhatsApp groups, we are in Facebook, where we just, you know, sometimes just push the information on others. Or even if a single person or many people at a time, and it creates a lot of agitation sometimes, and sometimes it creates a lot of it kind of disturbs people also. So how to apply this principle of speech, the same principle of speech when it comes to sharing information through this digital medium?
It's the same thing.
It can be compared.
Sending out emails, sending out Facebook messages, WhatsApp messages, tweeting, and forwarding messages, it's all speaking. It's all the urge to speak. Nowadays, one of the big problems is people forward messages without verifying them. Left and right, they just forward messages. And sometimes it causes so much havoc. So this is simply the urge to speak. It's just like someone tells you something in your ears, physically, verbally, and you go and tell 100 people that by speaking. Did you know what happened in our neighbor's house? This happened, that happened. So it's the same thing. So it is a digital equivalent of gossiping. It is a digital equivalent of uncontrolled speech. So it's the same. It's an extension of the urge to speak. So as Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport in Nectar of Instruction in the Vachovegam verse, that the desire to write so many books, write, all that is also an extension of the urge to speak. So even if it is in printed form, it is in digital form, it's all part of the urge to speak. Okay, one last question perhaps.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Thank you very much for this wonderful session on important topic of speaking. I have something personal question where how to deal with the situation where other person is speaking very agitatingly, and especially when we are not at the level where we can overcome that agitation, and also especially if the person is very close in relation.
Well, general principle is that if it's in a family situation or close relation, then when one person is agitated, the other person should be quiet. And when the second person is agitated, the first person should be quiet. If both get agitated at the same time, then there will be further problems. That is a general principle. Then the other person will calm down, then everything becomes okay. But if the second person also responds in the same agitated way, then the first person will also become more agitated and say many things that will be hurtful. And then the second person again responds, and it goes on increasing. So Vidura says that words are like arrows, but actually they are worse than arrows, because an arrow that penetrates the body can at least be removed and the wound will heal. But the arrows of our words, when they pierce the hearts of others, they will remain forever. Very hard to forget and heal very harsh words that may be spoken to others. Yes, so one has to be a little careful. So our words are like arrows. We should remember that every time we're letting loose so many arrows from our mouth. And we keep on shooting. So if we are having a shooting match of arrows in the house or among wherever, we keep shooting at each other, then it's not going to be solving any problems. So better we should just remain calm.
Only problem at that situation I face is when I try to remain calm, the other person thinks, okay, no, he is not capable of handling the situation, or not capable of doing things what is needed.
Then you should follow Narad Muni's advice to the snake. One time, Narad Muni came across a snake. As you know, Narad Muni always he's an expert preacher. So he has disciples in all the species of life. In all the different parts of the universe, he has disciples. So he came across this snake, and because Narad Muni preaches everywhere, so he preached to the snake and made the snake a devotee also. So then he told the snake that now you have become a Vaishnava, so you act like a Vaishnava now. So then Narad Muni went away. So the snake was initiated, he was chanting his 16 rounds, he was doing everything, all that was needed to do. And then Narad Muni came back later. He happened to be passing by and he saw his disciple. He said, let me go and check how is my disciple. So he saw the snake, but he was all black and blue, beaten, bruised all over. So he asked, what happened? Why are you in this condition? So he said that because now I'm a devotee, and so earlier when people would come near me, I would bite. I would bite them. I would hiss and bite. But now that I've become a devotee, I said I should not be violent. So therefore, people are taking advantage of me and they beat me, and then I just keep quiet. So Narad Muni said, I asked you not to bite, but I didn't ask you not to hiss. You know, hiss, they come like that. So the snake got the message. So whenever he was attacked, then he only hissed, but he didn't actually attack. So in other words, you get the message what I'm saying?
Yes, Maharaj.
So you may sometimes hiss if it is really required, but don't bite. Okay?
Such an wonderful insight.
Okay.
We really don't want this class to end, but I'm sure you have your schedules there. You already given your time, beyond what was planned. But we like to hear, throughout. Just to let you know, Maharaj, in our satsang, one of the specialties, proudly saying this, our classes are never less than 3 hours. So you just go on and discuss and a lot of interaction. And many of them are intellectuals and, scholarly people on the call. Somebody is a vice president, somebody is a director, somebody is also a very fresher. But we always have this lot of discussions and katha and So, Maharaj, one question I have is, what can we do to get your mercy like this once in a while? What is it that you want us to do?
Well, if you want mercy, then you have to go to exalted Vaishnavas, and that you can do. But if it's a question of just a class, maybe once in a few months, perhaps I can come, not on a very regular basis, but
Haribol Maharaj, thank you.
Maharaj, I also want to tell you that 2.5 years back, we started a small farm and we started taking care of some cows. We are 60 cows as on date. Even yesterday, there was a cow, Devaki, which gave to a girl calf. We named her Draupadi. So we are trying our best to do this, and I was very inspired when I visited Gokul Dham, and that's where we thought we should do some service to cows also. So we're all working in corporates, but we're trying to get whatever best we can, whatever best that we can do, connecting with nature and cows. So I know that I've seen videos of you loving cows, and maybe that will attract you one day to come to Gachibowli and also visit our cows now.
thank you. So I wish you all very well for your Krishna consciousness and also for your farm project and for all the wonderful preaching and practice of Krishna consciousness that you are all doing. Please continue like this enthusiastically, and thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.